All right, we are going to be learning tonight Maseches Shabbos Daf Ayin Daled. Yesterday we started with the Mishnah at the beginning, in the midst of Perek Klal Gadol, with all of the 39 malachos. We're going to put some of those numbers and some of those malachos to the limit today to try to begin to get a little bit of understanding, a little bit of a deeper understanding. And we're going to start about 5 or 6 lines from the bottom on Ayin Gimel Amud Beis. There, the Gemara opens up with V'hadash, one who does threshing. Asks the Gemara, Tana, Hadash v'hamenapet v'hamenafet kulan malacha achasein. Just a commentary. There are other methods of threshing that seem very similar. One of them is beating down flax. One of them is beating down cotton to get the small pieces out of the cotton, and they are similar in function to dash, which is where we break the shell of the kernel and try to set it up to remove the chaff from the kernel. So very similar, and the Gemara just highlights that those are malacha achasein, and therefore had you done multiple of those things in the same shot, in the same ha'elam, in the same moment of forgetfulness, you'd be chayav only one korban. Continues the Gemara, quoting from our Mishnah, we said that in the Sidur de Pas there is hazoreh. When you throw it up in the air and the wind blows away the chaff, the kernels fall back down. To haborer, to separate out the good from the bad or the bad from the good. We'll see today what that looks like. V'hatochen, to do grinding. V'hameraked, and also to do the sifting. So the Gemara here is bothered with something like we've been bothered by in many of these previous short Gemaras, and that is that there are a lot of things that are very, very similar here. Asks the Gemara, Hainu Zoreh, Hainu Borer, Hainu Meraked. Zoreh, you throw it up in the air, then the good falls back down, the bad gets blown away. Hainu Borer, that's the same thing as separating. Good and bad and good get separated. Hainu Meraked, we're sifting, the bad stuff stays in the sieve, and the rest of it falls through. So they all seem exactly the same. Abai v'Rava da'amri tarbayu komilsa dahavya b'mishkan. Very, very important klal that is laid down here by Abai and Rava. Anything that took place in the Mishkan, turning to the top of Ayin Daled and Aleph, afal gav de'ika dedamyala, even though it might look like there are those that are very similar to it, even so, chashivla, we're still going to list it in the Mishnah on Ayin Gimel. So it's true, Zoreh and Borer and Meraked, they're extremely similar. Why were they listed? So that's what Abai and Rava are saying here as a rule, that if it was in the Mishkan, then it should be listed, even if it's quite similar. So says the Gemara, nami kotesh. We should also include kotesh. What is kotesh? Take a look at Rashi, Dibur hamaschil v'lechashev nami kotesh, second line. Chitin, they would crush up wheat b'machteshes in a grinding device, lahasir klipasan, to remove the peel, tehavoy b'mikdash b'samamanim. We know that this existed in the mikdash when they were preparing to make samamanim. They were preparing to make these dyes. Elalav mishum dedamya ladash lo chashivla. The hanami mifrika milavushi. We're peeling off the outer layer. So here the Gemara says, okay, so you said that there was Zoreh, there was Borer, and the Meraked. They're all very similar. You just told me that if it was in the Mishkan, it should be listed afal gav de damila, even though there might be things that are otherwise similar to it. But if it happened in the Mishkan, then it's chashuv. So why not include kotesh? That happened in the Mishkan. So answers the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Shekain ani ochel pizza v'lo ptisha, because poor people don't do this. In other words, it's not something that's ubiquitous. Not everybody has to do it. Not everybody does it. And it might well be that people did it, but it wasn't essential to the process, and therefore it's not listed among them. Rava presents a different answer to this question. So Abaye said it just wasn't done by everyone. Rava presents a second answer. Rava Amar Hamani, who must be the author of our Mishnah? Rabbi. It must be Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. What does he say? Da Amar Avos Malacha Arbaim Chaser Achas. Like many, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was of the opinion there were 40 minus 1 malachos. The Chashiv Kotesh Havila Arbaim. And if in fact you were to add in one more, if you were to add Kotesh, so then you'd have the wrong number. You'd have 40. So Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi couldn't tolerate that. So he said, we therefore leave out Kotesh. The Gemara says, really? Like, how do you determine what gets included in next? Maybe leave out Zoreh, maybe leave out Borer, maybe leave out Meraked. Like, why did you get to choose what to leave out? The lepuk chada mehanach v'layel kotesh. The lepuk, leave out chada mehanach, one of these that we asked in our question of Borer, of Zoreh, Borer, and Meraked. Leave one of those out. V'layel kotesh, and then include in that case, just bring in kotesh. It's okay, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, if you want to say that 39 is the magic number, that's fine. But there has to be a rhyme and a reason as to what you include and what you exclude. So says the Gemara, because of the power of this question, the question is rejected. The Shita is rejected. Rava's answer is rejected. Al machavarta kide Abaye. Rather, we fall back on the opinion of Abaye that the reason why we don't include kotesh is because kotesh was not done by everyone, and therefore kotesh was excluded. The Gemara we are about to learn over the next, almost until the end of what we're going to be doing for the rest of the day, certainly for the next Amud, is about the Isser of Borer. Borer is among a short list of malachos that are very strange because nothing inherent happens to the item. When you light a fire, so then a wick is being burned and a candle is being consumed. When you do makeh b'patish, something used to not be functional and now it's functional. But with Borer, nothing happens be'etzem to the items that you're doing Borer upon. They're really the same before and the same after. They're just in different piles. So we're going to learn now 5 different shitas in the Amoraim as to how to understand one very, very difficult brisa. It's not a brisa. What is it? We'll see in a moment what it is, but it's something from the Tanaim. And this will inform a lot of what we're going to understand in regards to Borer. And just to be clear, I just would like for you to go through this Gemara with the mindset of how in the world did the Rishonim get from this page of Gemara to the Shulchan Aruch, which paskins that we only have 3 rules by Borer, that it has to be miyad, and it has to be yad, and it has to be without a special kli, and all the other, and it has to be ochel mitoch psolas. So let's get into this Gemara that has all 5 of the shitas of the Amoraim, and we will hopefully get to understand this very complex source in the Tanaim and understand a little bit more halacha l'maisa. 8 lines down. Ayin Daled Amud Aleph. Tana Rabbanan. Here is the difficult source in the Tanaim to understand. Hayu lefanav mine ochlin. A person had many types of food in front of them. Borer ve'ochel, borer umeniach. You can select and you can eat. You can select and you can not eat. You can leave it out, meniach. The lo yivror, and you also should not select. Again, a very difficult source to understand on its face. The imbirer chayav chatas. So you can select and eat food. You can select and not eat the food and leave it on the side. You're not allowed to select, and if you do, you're chayav a korban. Very enigmatic, very difficult to understand this at face value. So asks the Gemara, my ka'amar. In my Gemara, I put answer number 1, a number 1 by each of these. So answer number 1 is Ula. Amar Ula, what's pshat in this very difficult and hard to understand source from the Tanaim? Hachi ka'amar, this is pshat. Borer ve'ochel, what did the Mishnah mean? What did the source in the Tanaim mean when it said borer ve'ochel lebo bayom? That you can do for that particular day. Uborer umeniach lebo bayom. You could also separate and leave it on the side, namely not to eat it immediately. You're going to eat it later on Shabbos. Borer umeniach lebo bayom. Ulemachar, however, you're not allowed to separate. Ulemachar, you're not lo yivror. You're not allowed to separate something today for tomorrow. Being be rare, but if in fact you did that, chayav chatas, you're chayav a korban. So says the Gemara, what kind of answer is that? Ula, you can't say that argument. Why? Because maskif la Rav Chizda, v'chi muter la'afos lebo bayom, v'chi muter levasha lebo bayom. You're allowed to do borer, but only for part of the day. Either borer is muter or it's not. You can't just cook from Friday from shkia till midnight. That's ridiculous. So what? You're treating Borer, asks the Rav Chizda against Ula, you're treating Borer like this world unto itself. It doesn't make any sense. You can't cook for part of Shabbos. Why are you allowed to do Borer for part of Shabbos? And because of that, the Gemara moves on to answer number 2. Amar Rav Chizda, who rejected Ula, now presents answer number 2. Borer ve'ochel, what did the source in the Tanai mean when it said Borer ve'ochel? Pachos mikishir, as long as you're separating out, less than is the shear. And the next part of the Tanaim, Borer umeniach, what does that mean? Pachos mikashir. Ukashir, but if in fact it was a full shear, if it was the shear of a grogris, whatever the amount is, lo yivro, you're not allowed to separate. So that's how he understands the source in the Tanaim, is that it's talking about the shear. Asks the Gemara, Maskif lo Rav Yosef, v'chi muter la'avos pachos mikashir. Can I cook a roll that's less than a grogris? That's crazy. That's crazy. How are we parsing out? If you want to say that maybe I'm potter because I did borer on less than a shear, fine. But to say that it's mutter to do something that's less than a shear, what happened to chatzi shear aser min Torah? What happened to a whole world of halachos that we've just been learning? Chatzi this and chatzi that. Are you chayiv? Are you not chayiv? Here, if you do borer pachos mikashir, you're potter. It's mutter. That's crazy. So Rav Yosef rejects that and then recommends his own opinion. Answer number 3. Elama Rav Yosef, what's pshat in the source in the Tanaim? Borer ve'ochel biyad. This already should look familiar because we know that the din is that we are allowed to, when we do separate, it has to be with our hands and not with a utensil. But we'll see in a little bit more detail what that means. Borer ve'ochel, you can separate and eat with your hand. Borer umeniach biyad, you can also separate and eat and leave it on the side with your hands. However, b'kanonu v'tamchui, if you use something that has bigger holes in it, it's not a very good filter system. It's just, wouldn't be compared to today's colanders that we use for like noodles. Much bigger holes, much bigger separations. The kanon v'tamchui lo yivror. You're not allowed to separate there, but the imbirer pater avalasser there would only be an iser derabanan. However, uvenapo v'kavra, when you have a sieve, when you have a colander or a filter that's extremely fine, and the holes are very small and it sifts very well, then lo yivror v'imbir chayv chatas. So that's the shita of Rabbi Yosef, is that we have this additional question of how are you filtering? Is it barehanded? Is it with the kanon v'tamchui, which is not a very good filtering system, or is it with benapa v'kavra, a very fine filtering system? And the order would be as follows: barehanded is mutter, the kanon v'tamchui is pater avalasar, nisur derabanan, and benapa v'kavra would be nisur doraisa. Asks the Gemara, Rav Hamnuna asks against the shita of Rav Yosef, Maski Lor Rav Hamnuna, Mini Eknon v'tamchui Ektani. You're giving a distinction that the Mishnah doesn't talk about. You added the case of Pater Avalasar with the Knon v'tamchui. Do you see that in our Mishnah? Is our source in the Tanaim talk about Pater Avalasar? We have mutter, and Isser D'Oraisa Chayv Chata. So what you're adding in something that doesn't exist. So we're going to reject your opinion altogether as well. Although we don't reject it altogether because we do embrace this part of the miyad. We do the biyad, that it has to be with a separation that's reasonable. So then asks the Gemara. The Gemara then says, El Amar of Hamnuna, what must it be? Answer number 4. Borer ve'ochel, ochel mitoch psoles. Again, if you're familiar with the halachic language here, one is allowed to separate the good, the ochel, the food, mitoch psoles, from the psoles, that which is not food, that which is not supposed to be eaten. Borer umeniach, the rest of the source of the Tanaim would mean ochel mitoch psoles. You can also separate for later, as long as it's good for ochel mitoch psoles. However, psoles mitoch ochel lo yivror. However, you cannot take away the bad from the good, and if you do, the birer chayav chatas. This is shita number 4. Again, one that we are familiar with. Hirsch, you have a question? Oh, okay. I thought someone was unmuted. So that's what the Gemara answers his question as statement number 4, is that we add in the feature of ochel mitoch psoles, good from bad. Now here, this really gets into a very difficult question. Just this past Friday night, I was cleaning up a bowl of soup. And in the soup, there was a matzah ball that no one ate, or part of a matzah ball, and there was also liquid. So I'm not eating this food at all. It's done for. It's cold, and another child ate from it, and it probably has some other foods that the child ate, and no interest in eating it. I'm going to throw it out. So what do I do with it? Can I scoop out the matzah ball into the garbage, and then dump out what's the ochel and what's the psoles? Is ochel and psoles subjective? If you like certain foods, and Jelly Bellies, they have certain flavors of candies that nobody likes to eat and some that others love to eat. So let's say by you, the red cinnamon one, you love it and I don't love it. I happen to love it. Let's say that you love it and I don't. So then for me, is that psoles? So mistama, that's the case. That's how a lot of the posts can discuss these types of sugyas. But all of that is woven into this shita of Rav Hamnuna. But then the Gemara asks on that as well. Maskif la Abaye. Abaye asks against the shita of Rav Hamnuna. Do you have a different source from the Tanaim than I do? Do you see anything listed there about ochel mitoch psoles? You guys are making up your own answers here. How does this work here? You're inserting so much information into the source from the Tanaim. Therefore, Ela Amar Abaye, Borer ve'ochel le'altar. He adds in the third, it's the 5th answer, but it's the third one that we embrace, halacha l'maisa. And that is that one is allowed to separate when it is for immediate use. You can also separate and put it on the table for relatively immediate use. But for later in the day, you're not allowed. If in fact you do separate, not for now, but for later in the day, then it's kiborer le'otzar. It's as if you have separated it for the sake of putting it in the storehouse. You're separating it for after Shabbos v'chayev chatas. So these are the 5 shitas. And the last 3 shitas are the ones that we accept halacha l'maisa, the shitas of Rav Yosef, Rav Hamnuna, and Abaye. Good halachic knowledge at the Shabbos table. Who are the 3 Amoraim that we lean on for Borer? And it is these 3 Rabbanim Chashuvim of Rav Yosef, Rav Hamnuna, and Abaye. And one can remember them in that it is ochel mitoch psoles, it is yad, and it is la'altar, ayal. So those are the 3 letters. Is ochel mitoch psoles. You can only the 3 conditions are interdependent. All of them need to be done at the same exact time. They need to all be checked off. It needs to be good from bad. You can never separate bad from good. It needs to be with a yad. It needs to be with your hand and not with a special separation tool. And it needs to be le'altar. It needs to be immediate in that you're consuming it relatively soon. If you violate any of those, that's a discussion as well. What have you violated? Have you violated yet an Isser D'Oraisa when you're missing only one feature? What if it's not le'altar, but it's everything else? What if it's only biyad, but it's not everything else? Those are shilas as well. Someone just asked a question as well. Hold on 1 second. Why wouldn't the whole bowl of soup be considered garbage? You weren't going to eat soup or matzah ball. Correct. It's true. It's true that I wasn't going to eat any of it. Really, it's all ochel. But when I was separating it to put in the garbage, what was considered ochel as it relates to the garbage? It's the matzah ball. I need to separate that. That's what I want to. So the poskim discuss these cases. How far do we go? Is it only for achila? What if I'm cleaning it? What if it's not about achila at all? What if I'm cleaning up a Monopoly game and all of the bills are mixed into one pile? So then can I take the tens out? It's ochel mitoch psolas, but I'm not eating it. It's miyad, I'm putting it away right now, but not for use right now. So all the posts can get into these shilas because the din of borer doesn't only apply to food, and that makes it extremely complicated. We'll see in just a couple of lines a recommendation that's made when we do have a mixture in order to solve that problem. But I just want to add one critical ha'ara when it comes to the world of borer, and that is that borer only applies when there is a ta'aroves, when there is a mixture of items. If the mixture is not a mixture, and this is hard to define as well, the post can grapple with defining a mixture. If I could reach in and clearly, let's say it's apples and oranges, is that a ta'aroves? That's not a ta'aroves. I can reach in and take the apple that I want, take the orange. They're big, they're large, it's easy. I know what I'm doing, it's easy. That's not like jelly beans. It's not the same. So the post can struggle to describe this, but nevertheless, there is no din of borer where there is no ta'aroves. So let's say, for example, you have $100 bills, 100 Monopoly bills, but they're all in their own distinct pile. They're not. That's not borer. There's no din of borer there. You don't have to worry about ochel mitoch psolas. You don't have to worry about miyad. You don't have to worry about le'altar. Take whatever you want, put it away. And this will lead to a solution that we will see shortly, which is, can one ruin a ta'aroves on Shabbos? This happens frequently. Let's say you ran your dishwasher before Shabbos. All the forks and knives and spoons are all collected in the same bin, and you grab them all. So if you can't separate those unless you follow all the rules. So one way to solve that problem is to spread them out over the table and ruin the ta'aroves. You make things fall in a way where they're not connected to each other, and it no longer looks like a mixture. However, the post can define that, not a simple conversation, and that's a great solution for separating. Same with jelly beans. You want some jelly beans, take a handful and then spread them out in a way where there's no borer. And then if you don't like the ones that taste bad, get rid of them. That's not borer. Borer only applies when there's a ta'aroves. Let's continue in the Gemara. These are the 5 shitas, and let's get a little bit lemaisa here. Amruha Rabbanan Kame de Rabba. We're 2/3 of the way down. Ayin Dalad Manal. The rabbis spoke about this in front of Rabba. They quoted all 5 shitas. And Amar Lahu, Rava said back to the Rabbanim, Shapir Amar Nachmeni. We've learned this a number of times already since the beginning of Shas, that Nachmeni was either the primary name of Abaye or it was a nickname of Abaye, one of the two. And one of the indications that it was actually his real name is that he was an orphan, and the name Abaye is Av Hashem, as mentioned before, that his father was really Hashem. He didn't know his father, and he was raised by a woman who was just taking care of him, but really not a blood mother, just someone taking care of him. So anyways, nevertheless, Amar Luhu, Rava said, I like the opinion of Abaye. So Abaye, what was Abaye's shita? So if we look back up just a couple of lines, Abaye was the one who said the din of le'altar, that it has to be done immediately. Okay, let's talk practical. Let's say that a person had 2 types of food in front of them in a mixture. So let's say that in the Gemara, but as discussed, that's a fundamental aspect of borer. And you did exactly what our source in the Tanaim said at the 2 dots at the top of the page. Ravashi masni pater, Rabbi Yomi amidifti masni chayev. So it says the Gemara, Ravashi masni pater, vatani chayev. Well, how is that possible? You're not allowed to do that. Answers the Gemara, Lokasha habek non v'tamchu yhabenapa v'kavla. A distinction that we saw already, but maybe one that we did not hold like initially, because we rejected that opinion of the distinction of the different types of filters, those which are less good, the knon and tamchui, and those that are more thorough, the napa v'kavla. So here the Gemara adds in this distinction in the name of Ravashi is that when one separates with Kanon v'tamchui, with the filters that are not quite as good, with the sieves that are not quite as good, that's only an Isser Derabanan, Pater Abalasar. But if one were to make the distinction and they would then separate with Napa v'Kavra, so that would be an Isser Deraisa. When I lived in Eretz Yisrael, when Rachel and I lived there, all the flour there had to be sifted. Our flour here in America is cleaner, but I don't remember ever finding a bug, but we would have these round things with a very, very tight netting on there, like very tight and very fine. Nothing could get through there. There were times that just chunks of the flour couldn't get through. They were clotted together. So that would be an Isser Doraisa Mamish. That's this case of Napa B'Kava. But that's the distinction that Rav Ashi makes. Kiyasa Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came to Bavel, Amar Shabsa de Rabbi Havai. It was the week that, it was the Shabbos that Rabbi was supposed to give the drasha. The Iklu, Rabbi Ami, Rav Asi, and a bunch of Rabbanim came to listen. And Shoda Kamayu Kiltala de Pere. And they threw in front of him a basket of fruits. Now, they weren't sure what the motivation was. V'lo yadana, they weren't sure why he threw the basket. He was afraid that maybe there was this wild shita that even ochel mitoch psoles would be aser, that even separating the good from the bad. So he threw the basket so that everything would fall out and ruin. This is the Mari Makom for separating the silverware and ruining the taroves. This is exactly where the idea came from, is that they threw it in front of Rabbi Bibi. So we don't know if that was the reason, or to say, take, we have plenty of food, ayin yafa, we have so much to share, please, of course, take whatever you're comfortable taking. Nobody knows why. So says the Gemara, so that end of the story. So that's what we didn't know exactly what the reason was, but it does entertain this havamina of whether or not one would be concerned about the shita of ochel mitoch psolos is considered borer as well. Of course, we don't hold that way. We hold that ochel mitoch psolos is permissible, provided, of course, that you're checking off the other two boxes of biyad and la'altar, that you're not using a filter, and that you're eating the food with a relative term of immediacy. Chizkiah Amar, 3 lines from the bottom, haborer tormisin mitoch psolos shalahen chayet. One who separates beans from the shell that surrounds the bean, they're chayet. So lema, maybe we should argue, kasavra Chizkiah ochel mitoch psoles aser. Maybe we see a real shita, the shita of Chizkiah. Maybe he holds that even ochel mitoch psoles, taking the good from the bad, maybe that's aser. Says the Gemara, no, shiny tormasin. Tormasin are different. As we turn to the top of Ayin Daled Amud Beis, why is it different? Because the shalke le sheva zimne, it's cooked 7 times. It's a very, very hard food, these particular types of beans. We don't know what genus they're from, but it was a type of beans that were very hard to cook. The ilo shaklele misrach, and if you don't take off the peels, the beans are going to spoil, and therefore ukipsoles mitoch ochel dami, and therefore it's as if you're taking the bad from the good. But in general, one, for example, is allowed to eat an orange on Shabbos. You can eat a banana on Shabbos, because even though you're taking the psoles from you don't have to bite out a piece of the peel. We don't have to do that. Why? Because it's derech achila b'kach. We'll see this heter specifically at some point, that when it's derech achila, it's permissible. This shaila also comes up in chalent. I don't want all the pieces of the chalent. I want the barley, I want the meat, I want the potatoes, I want the kishka, whatever you put in. So are you allowed to move things around? So some of the posts can say that's permissible. It's derech achila b'kach. It's a normal way to eat. But that's not considered borer. Also, there are just some loopholes that when we say borer is... let's say, for example, you have a fly in your soup and you want to remove it. So take a little bit of the liquid with so that it's not psoles mitoch ochel. It's also psoles v'ochel mitoch ochel. Then that you also, it's a way to circumvent the isser. So let's say you have some food on your plate that you don't like, or a kid at the table says, a young child says, "Oh, get this off my plate. I don't want it." So we should teach them, if you don't like red peppers, that's fine. We're going to take red peppers and a cucumber so that you don't violate the isser of both. Very good. So that's why this din is unique. It's a unique halacha by these beans, but in general, one is allowed to remove a peel from a fruit on Shabbos, even though you're removing psoles mitoch ochel. Ve'atochein. How do we define grinding? Israeli salad. That's this Gemara right here. Amar Papa Haiman deparis silka chayev mishum tochein. Someone who cuts something, in this case a beet, if they cut it very finely, then there is a potential to violate the Isser of Tochein. Very hard to measure exactly what the size is, but there are those who are makbid not to make Israeli salad, very, very fine cut things that are then become like a very gentle mixture. We have this idea elsewhere in halacha where, for example, we treat flour like lach. We treat flour to be like a liquid because of the tiny, tiny, tiny granules and components of the flour. So here too, if you make something cut so small, then you can be chayav midoraisa for tochen. It's not the same as it was done in the Mishkan, because in the Mishkan they ground things up into flour. It's true, but we look relative to that particular item that you're cutting, and therefore, if you cut up something into such small pieces, you could then violate the issur of tochen. Amar Rav Menashe, Haiman desalis silte, someone who were to cut up pieces of wood into tiny, tiny splinters as well, chayav mishum tochen, similar. And the Gemara here is clearly expanding tochen outside of the world of tochen. Is that true everywhere? You cut up cheese into very small pieces. Let's say you take a piece of mozzarella that's actually a square, and you cut it up into what looks like mozzarella shreds. Is that tochen d'oraisa? So we have to get into these sugyas and figure out exactly what the parameters are. Amar Rav Ashi, ikapet amashcha. So when you are cutting things, if you're also makpet on the size, chayav mishum mechatech, then you have a secondary issur of cutting in a measured amount, which is nisur d'oraisa. This gets into the halachic discussion of tearing toilet paper on Shabbos because it specifically has perforation. Tearing anything on the perforations on Shabbos might be problematic because of mechatech, you're cutting things down to a very specific size. So this is lamaisa. Let's say you run out of tissues. You don't have any, facial tissues to use in the bathroom on Shabbos, and all that's left is toilet paper. So the makom kavod abrios, you don't have a choice. All you have is toilet paper. So there, the poskim say, b'diavad, you're allowed to use toilet paper that's on the roll, provided that you tear in between the perforations, because that's megala, that reveals that you don't care about the sheer, you don't care about the measurement of toilet paper per se down to the perforation, just tear in between the perforations. And that is a leniency that the poskim quote. Litzorech, of course, one should try to plan before Shabbos, either to pre-tear toilet paper to make sure that there are tissue boxes or whatever the case may be. But b'diavad, when you're stuck, so then the halacha is that al kavod abrios, one is allowed to tear in between the perforations. I remember 20 years ago, I was 19 years old, I was learning in Yeshurun, still was in the old building, and I remember seeing Rabbi Cohn take out a whole package of paper towels, the ones that pull from the thing. And he noticed that all of them were tethered a little bit to one another. Just a little, the machine, when it cut them, it left a little tether connecting each one to the next. And they were being done on the sugya. They were being mefalpel. Is that considered mechatech? Is that not considered mechatech? So toilet paper, for sure, absolutely that's the case. We have some brands of wipes for baby wipes. Some of them are connected one to another. They're 90% perforated, but the last little bit is still, that could be mechatech, maybe not d'oraisa, but certainly midrabanan. That could be a big problem. So sometimes we have to scramble. We take a pair of scissors, we cut off the line. You got to figure it out. But all of these sugyas come from this din right here, that one who is mechatech, one who is measuring out a specific amount, could run into some halachic issues. 6 lines down, v'halosh v'ha'ofeh. What did we say in our Mishnah? We mentioned that v'ha'ofeh, that when one bakes, that is going to be one of the 39 malachos. And as mentioned, that's part of situr depas. That's how we make bread. Asks the Gemara, almost like incredulously, Amar Papa, Shavak Tana Didan Bishel Samamanim. You left out another thing that was mamish bishel. How did you boil out to get the colors, to get the dyes? You took spices, you put them in a pot, and you boiled the pot. So how is the Mishnah only talking about Ofeh? Where's Bishel Samamanim? Dahava b'Mishkan. V'nakat Ofeh. You went and chose to take Ofeh. Why did you pick one over the other? So halacha l'maisa, there's no difference because it's all the same genre. Frying, it's a big discussion in Hilchos Basar B'Chalav whether or not frying has the same status of Bishel, because we know that when it comes to the Isser D'Oraisa of the Basar B'Chalav, that it says in the Torah 3 times, Lo Sebashel Gedi B'Chal Be'Vimo, and that there are 3, the Gemara, and I think it's in Chulin, the Gemara learns that there are 3 Isurim by Basar B'Chalav. There's Bishel, there's Achila, and there's Hana. So what's the Bishel? Is the Bishel only mamish with a liquid medium? Can you own stock in Burger King, which if you're getting Hana, if it's really not Bishel, they don't cook with liquid, they put cheese on top of a burger after it's already, that's Bishel D'Oraisa? So those are shilas that you have to figure out, is what's included in Ofeh, in this Mishnah, with some applications to other areas of halacha as well. So the Gemara answers quite simplistically, you're right, I agree that there was Bishel Samamanim in the Mikdash. However, as mentioned yesterday, the first 11 of the malachos were categorized. Tana Didan Sidur de Pas. The Tana of our Mishnah was teaching the Sidur de Pas anyways. He was already teaching the first 11 things that would lead us to, from beginning to end, leading us to the lechem hapanim, to the showbreads. And because of that, he picked Ofeh. But again, halacha l'maisa, we don't distinguish between bishul and between Ofeh. And the Rishonim, again, will have to define how far does it go. What about tzli? What about tikkun, frying, and etc. Amar Rav Acha bar Rav Avira, Haiman deshada sichsa le'atuna, chayev mishum levashal. Someone takes a peg, seemingly made out of metal, and they put it into an oven. So the halacha is that you're chayev mishum levashal. Why are you chayev mishum levashal? What are you cooking? There's no food here. So Pshita asks the Gemara. Obviously, you should be chayev because you're changing the status of something. You're making it hotter. Maybe you're making it harder. Maybe you're making it more soft. Let's see. Says the Gemara, Ma'udatema, you might have thought that when you put this in the oven, it's going to make it stronger. There you're trying to make the mana, you're trying to make the kli, shrure, you're trying to make it stronger, and that's your intention. Says the Gemara, and havamina, that it would not be a problem because the food didn't get softer. Cooking be'etzem softens things, right? That's what happens when you cook things. They typically get softer. Says the Gemara, Kamash Malan, what do we see from here? Mirpa Rafi v'hadar kamit. That when you take metal and you heat it up, first it gets softer in the oven, in the heat, and then v'hadar afterwards kamit, and then it solidifies still more. But when it gets soft, that's the problem. This leads to a modern day lessening of an isser. I stood on my desk when I was a Rabbi at Hillel Torah and took out a fluorescent light bulb from the ceiling. It's very different than the incandescent light bulbs. Thanks to my chemist of a father, the metal that is the filament inside that incandescent light bulb is tungsten. It can handle a tremendous amount of electricity, and it puts off a very bright light. So that's a bishul d'oraisa. The Rambam quotes this ladina that when one heats up metal to the point that it becomes red, so that's bishul d'oraisa. Above my head, I have a bunch of LED light bulbs and some CFLs, and all of those function very differently. Fluorescent is gases, and CFLs function differently. And LEDs are they all function so differently. Halacha l'maisa l'may nafkamina. Let's say that a person's in an emergency situation and they have the headspace to decide. Don't turn on the lamp that's incandescent. Turn on the LED. Turn on something that's less of an isser. And the gradations are so much less that halacha l'maisa, let's say you have to make an emergency phone call on Shabbos. Use your cell phone. Use your cell phone. Don't pick up a house line that has a red little light on it. That might be it's mutter ladina because it's an emergency. But again, with the headspace, knowing that our phones are LED screens, that's way less halachically problematic. And again, those all derive from these types of halachos. Hafochba v'hafochba dekula, but everything's in the Gemara. Even halachos from 2,000 years ago apply now, and that's exactly this din. Is that what happens when you cook metal? What happens when you're heating something up? So the metal softens or becomes red, as the Rambam explains in a different context, and that could be bishul midaraisa. So that's what's going on here with the sichsa la'atuna when you put this metal peg into an oven. Next case. Amar Rabba bar Avuna Haiman Artach Kufra, someone who is going to boil tar, Chayiv Mishum Avashal. Says Gemara Pshita, of course you're going to be Chayiv because of the tar. Why would you not be Chayiv? You're boiling something. So says the Gemara, Ma'u Detema Kevan de Hadar V'i Kusha, because afterward it's going to be harder than it was when it started. It started with a hardness of 8. And then by the time it finishes cooking, it has a hardness of 10. So I would have thought, Havamina, that it is. So it says, Kamash Malan. What we see from there is that's not true, because during the cooking process, it softens, and therefore that's an Isser D'Oraisa. Amar Rava, excuse me. Rava says, Haiman da'avan chavisa, a person who makes a barrel, Chai Mishum Sheva Chatos. Based on the methods of how they made a barrel, they would violate 7 Isuri D'Oraisa by making a barrel. See Rashi for all the various Isuri D'Oraisa that one would violate. Tenura, if you were to make an oven, Chayav Mishum Shmona Chatos, you'd violate 8 Isuri D'Oraisa. Again, these things are not applicable to us nowadays because our ovens are not the same and we don't build barrels from scratch that often. But the awareness, and just a frame of mind of thinking, how many things will I violate if I do X is an important mindset to have. Omar Abaye, right halfway down, Haiman da'avad chilsa, we had this word earlier, somebody who makes a basket, Chayav achas esrei chatos, you will violate 11 Isuri D'Oraisa. If you make a particular type of rim, Chayav shalosh esrei chatos, you'll add another 2 to the count. Hagozes esat semer v'hamalabnu, halfway down at the 2 dots last of the short lines, as we get toward the end of Ayin Daled Amud Beis, Amar Rabba bar Chana, Rabbi Yochanan, hatavet semer shal gabe behema b'Shabbos chayav shalosh chatos. Let's say that while the wool is still attached to the animal, a person were to weave it on the back of the animal while still attached. Chayiv shalosh chatos. Achas mishum gozes. One is that invariably you're going to pull out some hairs, and that's usher. The achas mishum napes. The second is combing. You first have to straighten out the hairs in order to weave them. The achas mishum tabe. These are all listed in our Mishnah as isuri d'oraisa. Now you're turning it into a fabric. You're turning it into a garment. All of those are isuri d'oraisa. Rav Kahana Amar ein derech geziza bekach ve'ein derech menapetz bekach ve'ein derech tavui bekach. No, I don't agree. This is not the norm. That's not how people weave clothing. It's ineffective because it's only as long as is the hair on the animal. It's not the way that you make clothing. So he rejects all three and says, no, there's no chiyuv here. Granted, they're all going to be at least isurei derabanan, but they would not be treated as avos malacha. Says the Gemara, really? Below, is that true? Ve'atanya, we have a brisa. Mishmei Rabbi Nechemia. Shatov be'izim, the tavu be'izim. What do we see? We see that there is this concept of tavu be'izim that's listed in a brisa. Alma tavya al gabe behema shma tavya. We see that it is such a thing that you can make a fabric on top of an animal. So how can you, Rav Kahana, say ein derech tavui bekach? It's not true. We have a brisa that says that it is derech tavui bekach. To answer the Gemara, chachma yisera shiny. By those people in the earlier generations, they had a chachma yisera. They were mamish bekim. They knew what they were doing. Nowadays, we're not like that. Nowadays, we're not such bigchim. So even in the times of Rav Kahana, who was an Amora, it's different than the Brisa. By the times of the Brisa, they were Tanoim. So they had the chachma. The Amoraim did not have the chachma. Rav Kahana was a third generation Amor. We're talking 100 years, 75 to 100 years. Talking about the year 300 of the Common Era. They already lost the chachma of how to be tavu semer on a behema, how to braid or to weave on a behema. So therefore, in those quote unquote modern times, it would not be an isur daraisa. Tana Rabbana. The rabbis taught us a din atolesh as a knaf, someone who takes off a feather from an animal, vehakomto vehamorto, and you cut off the top, hakotmo, not komto, vehakoto, someone who cuts off the top. The Rishonim here point out, just like we have in our down jackets, you cut off the top, which doesn't have the thicker part, I don't know what it's called in science, the thicker part of the feather that's very strong, the quill component, just the top that's super soft, they would cut it out and put it inside a pillowcase. They'd make it into something that needed to be very soft. That's kotmo. The hamorto, the one who would strip down the feather down to the quill, chayiv shalosh chatos. Ve'amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish tolesh, someone who was going to tear something off, chayiv mishum gozes. Kotem, he's explaining each one. Kotem chayiv mishum mechatech, if you're going to cut off the top, you're measuring, so you're going to be chayiv on mechatech. Memare chayiv mishum memachek, and if you're going to strip away the hairs on the feather down to the quill, that's an isra of memachek. And we are going to stop here tonight and pick up tomorrow. Nedimir Hashem for Daf Ayin Hey. Hope each of you have a beautiful night. A pleasure having the opportunity to learn together, and we'll see you tomorrow. Kol Tov.